Actress Natalie Wood was found dead today.
Her body was found floating here.
Officials said she apparently drowned accidentally.
But nothing further on the circumstances.
For over 4 decades, one of Hollywood's most haunting mysteries has remained unsolved. What really happened to Natalie Wood on that cold November night in 1981? As new witnesses emerged, stories shifted, and suspicions grew. One name remained at the center of it all: Robert Wagner. But what exactly did he say, and what did he leave out? From eerie screams heard on somber waters to years of silence that spoke volumes, the bits of this puzzle might at last be moving. Did a cautious remark seal hushed rumors long whispered, or did it open up more questions? The answers might be nearer than ever, or just beyond grasp. What did Robert Wagner finally tell us? And why now? Delayed alarm, a delayed alarm. One of the most shocking elements of Natalie Wood's fatal accident in 1981 is the enormous delay in her being reported missing. Following a night of binge drinking and a charged mood on board the Splendor yacht, moored off the coast of California's Catalina Island, Natalie is said to have disappeared sometime around 11 p.m. Several witness accounts, such as those of the captain of the yacht, Dennis Davern, indicate that there had been an argument between Wood and her husband, Robert Wagner, just hours before she vanished. Wagner, however, did not see fit to immediately organize a search or alert the authorities. Instead, several hours went by before official assistance was called for. It wasn't until about 3:30 a.m., over 4 hours since Natalie had last been spotted, that the U.S. Coast Guard was called in. Even more alarming, the captain of the rescue vessel that ultimately retrieved Wood's body, Roger Smith, reported that he was not notified until approximately 5:11 a.m., almost 6 hours after she had gone missing. These delays were particularly unsettling given the bad weather that night, such as choppy waters and strong winds, that would have made any accidental plunge into the water instantly perilous. The slow response defied common practice in maritime emergencies, in which time is of the essence to facilitate rescue operations. Later, Captain Dennis Davern testified publicly that Wagner explicitly directed him not to activate the boat's searchlights and to seek assistance. He quoted Wagner as having said to him, "Don't do anything. Let's not turn on the searchlight." This hesitation, combined with Wagner's other decision to relocate the yacht to a more isolated harbor that same morning, contributed to speculation even more. In Davern's opinion, Wagner was more concerned with controlling appearances than with locating his wife. Those disclosures would be crucial when the case was reopened after some decades, as they suggested potential negligence, or worse. That was the nub of the delay in calling for assistance in the fueling of long-standing suspicion regarding Robert Wagner's involvement. Later on, the investigators conceded that they would have had much higher chances of determining the true sequence of events on that specific night if they had been summoned much earlier. It is further mentioned that in 2018, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department labeled Wagner as a person of interest because of discrepancies in his own account and his reluctance to cooperate with the investigators. Extended silence regarding Natalie's vanishing is maintained as one of the most harmful elements of circumstantial evidence that hangs around in an enigma that, to date, has never been conclusively solved. But the silence on that yacht did not cease there. Someone on board had other things to say. Captain Dennis Davern's testimony, Captain Dennis Davern, who was on board the Splendor the night Natalie Wood died, long insisted her death was not an accident. His testimony has become one of the most important and contentious aspects of the case over the years. At first, Davern agreed with Robert Wagner's account of what had happened, saying that Natalie had slipped and fallen as she attempted to tie up a dinghy. But during the early 2000s, he started altering his account, indicating that he had been coerced into keeping quiet and that Wagner could have had a hand in what actually happened to Natalie. In several interviews and a co-authored book, Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor, Davern claimed that Wagner and Wood had a bitter fight in the cabin on the yacht the night before she went missing. Davern said he suspected Wagner became enraged with jealousy over the proximity of Natalie to her co-star Christopher Walken, who was also on board at the time. Davern claimed to have heard furniture crashing and the fight raging, and then an abrupt silence. Soon after, Wagner reportedly approached him and said, "Natalie's missing," but told him not to activate the searchlights on the yacht or call for emergency assistance. Most importantly, Davern told a 2011 Today interviewer that he believed Wagner was responsible for what had befallen Natalie and that he then fabricated to police during the original investigation in 1981, telling them that Wagner had coached him. When a case was reopened by the Los Angeles County Sheriff in 2011, Davern emerged as the main witness in that case as the authorities reported that his new testimony was considered credible. He continued to maintain that if emergency responders had been called in time, Natalie's life could have been saved. Although Wagner has not yet elected to go public with what he knows, Davern's adamant accusations have maintained public and official scrutiny over Wagner's role in the tragedy. Davern has, in interviews and affidavits, felt deep remorse for not acting more on the night in question. The case of his testimony from silent witness to whistleblower is representative of the added complexity and appalling reality of what transpired on the Splendor. Witnesses heard Natalie's chilling cries. One of the most chilling elements of the Natalie Wood case comes from independent witnesses Marilyn Wayne and John Payne, who were moored nearby on their boat the night of November 28, 1981. In the quiet, foggy hours around midnight, Marilyn reported being startled awake by the desperate sound of a woman's voice crying out, "Help me! Someone please help me! I'm drowning." According to her sworn statements, the cries continued for approximately 15 minutes. In spite of the urgency in the voice, the sounds gradually disappeared without any noticeable rescue attempt being made. John Payne, who was on board as well, supported Marilyn's version. They both remembered hearing not only the woman screaming, but also a man's voice responding in the distance, saying in a calm and seemingly offhand voice, "Okay, honey." That single phrase has bedeviled the investigation for decades, raising profoundly disturbing questions about whether someone on the Splendor overheard Natalie and did nothing about it, or worse, deliberately chose not to. Marilyn pointed out that the voice of the woman was indubitably distraught and called out again and again, confirming that she had not slipped silently into the water as initial reports had indicated. Allegedly, the Wayne Payne account strengthens an already strong case even further for the reason that, shortly after Natalie had perished, both had tried to report what they had overheard. Marilyn asserted she wrote a letter to the police, and subsequent anonymous threats or warnings were made to her instructing her to keep mum. Then, in subsequent interviews, she reported her initial efforts at discussing the matter were disregarded or dismissed in the initial investigation. And there was no notice once more until many years later when the case was reopened. This also creates more intrigue and suspicion to an already complicated case, as a previously given testimony resurfaced. These whales are opposing to Natalie, as no easy accident could account for her death. She was also a famous victim of an intense fear of dark water, which clearly could not deter her to venture out from the yacht alone. Many reliable witnesses, in their testimonies asserting that a woman in distress was heard, that a man heard in silence, fueled wide speculations that a golden chance would have been lost to save her life. Such evidence now remains solid among the strongest circumstantial proofs available, indicating that Natalie Wood's final moments were far from accidental. Natalie's fear of water, Natalie Wood's profound fear of black water, is among the strongest supporting factors that belies the theory of accidental drowning. Since childhood, Natalie had an intense fear of open water, which had been instilled in her by a chilling prophecy made by a fortune teller that she told her mother that Natalie would die in dark water. Throughout life, this phobia was hardwired in her mind and influenced the way she interacted with water. In various interviews and individual conversations, Natalie was apprehensive about swimming in open or deep water, especially at night. Her sister, Lana Wood, reaffirmed this fear in her 2021 book Little Sister, saying outright that Natalie would never, ever have ventured out of the yacht alone, particularly at night in stormy weather. It was cold, blustery, and a choppy night around Catalina Island on November 28, 1981. That night, Natalie and her husband, Robert Wagner, Actor Christopher Walken and yacht captain Dennis Davern had been drinking alcohol that night at a nearby restaurant before heading back to the Splendor yacht, which was docked in a secluded and less secure region named Two Harbors. It was also surprising that the dinghy that was later discovered washed up on shore was not heard starting up or moving that night by any other nearby boaters. Wagner said Natalie might have attempted to get it because it was creaking, but this idea conflicts with her lifelong aversion to water and the conditions that night. It would be unlikely for a person so afraid of the ocean to get into or even aboard a dinghy in total darkness, intoxicated and on medication, without anyone noticing. The attire Natalie wore when her body was discovered puts even more doubt into the theory of accidental drowning. She wore a flannel nightgown, down coat, and socks. Not the type of clothing that would be worn to go out on a wet, unsteady deck, much less to get into a dinghy. This information shows that she had no intention of departing the cabin or preparing for any type of activity on deck. Her clothing, rather, shows that she was most likely in bed or in bed preparation when something out of the ordinary occurred. Her recorded fear of water and these conditions and circumstances make the possibility of her voluntarily jumping from the yacht highly unlikely. Besides, some of her close friends and crew members of the past confirmed that Natalie used never to stroll around yachts alone, especially at night. She always preferred to stay in the cabin for security when the yacht was required to anchor overnight. Even by day, she avoided activities with exposure to the edge of a boat. This was not a random fear. It was an incapacitating phobia. All of this supports the notion that Natalie's movement into the water that night wasn't the result of a conscious decision to leap from the boat or initiate any changes on her part. Instead, the whole situation strongly suggests that her movement into the water had something to do with some factor beyond an innocent error or personal decision. The toxicology report, the coroner's report of Natalie Wood's death, uncovered sinister details that developed suspicion of criminal activity instead of an innocent fall overboard. Her alcohol content in blood was 0.14%, a level of clear intoxication. Besides alcohol, she had also taken motion sickness medication, Dramamine, and a painkiller, both of which enhance drowsiness and motor impairment and can be exacerbated when used with alcohol. Though this might imply that she was just impaired and slipped by accident, the state of her body painted a more complex picture. The autopsy revealed a number of bruises on Natalie's body, including bruising on her arms and legs, and especially the left side of her face. Her cheek also had an abrasion, and she had a scratch on her neck, wounds that raised caution among the investigators. The coroner initially thought these wounds were likely inflicted when she fell into the water or in transit when her body floated. Yet, on re-examination of the case decades later, forensic experts raised questions about whether all the injuries were from accidental drowning. Some bruises seemed fresh and in positions that implied a fight, possibly preceding her getting into the water. These findings acquired a greater weight when put together with evidence of an enraged fight on the yacht that evening. Captain Dennis Davern had for a long time insisted that Natalie and Robert Wagner were quarreling moments before she disappeared. He said that shouting and the sound of objects shattering could be heard emanating from their cabin. Wagner later admitted breaking a bottle of wine in a dispute with Christopher Walken about Natalie's career, a discovery that contradicted his earlier, more subdued version of events on the evening in question. Unexplained bruises raised the suspicion that a struggle may have occurred mere moments before Natalie went missing. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office revised Natalie Wood's death certificate in 2012 to list a new cause of death: drowning and other undetermined factors. This revision acknowledged that the physical evidence was not able to fully suggest a mere accident. The convergence of alcohol, drugs, and bruising, especially to parts of the body unlikely to be bruised in a straightforward accident, suggests Natalie's death was more than mere bad luck and rough seas. These warning signs, which have been unsolved for decades, continue to drive public and official calls for a last answer of what really happened that night. But what came next might have been even more disturbing. His tale did not remain constant. Wagner's changing account. What Robert Wagner has said about the events leading up to Natalie Wood's drowning has changed significantly over the years, undermining his credibility and fueling public suspicion. Immediately after Natalie drowned in 1981, Wagner explained to authorities that she was probably trying to get a dinghy